Okay, so here's another video that goes out to my clan invasion friends. We're going to look at some more clan OmniMechs in this one. This one we will look at the light mechs. So a thing to just keep in mind with the clan light OmniMechs from the 30-50 period is that they are pretty underwhelming compared with the medium mechs. And that even goes when you factor in the battle value expense, because the lights are really not that much cheaper than the mediums in terms of battle value, and a lot of the time they're just not going to function that strong compared with the mediums. So be ready for some low grades here. As just a reminder of how I do these ratings, I'm going to grade each chassis overall, A through F, and I'm going to look at each one and pick out what I think is the best overall fighting variant that is just going to win a fight as much as possible. I'm going to pick out the one that is the best fighter as a deal for the battle value, and for some of the chassis I will pick out a configuration that I think is also interesting and might be worth taking. So the Fire Moth, or the Dasher, I'm going to just go in tonnage order this time rather than in order of how high the grades are. But I'm going to give the Dasher a C+. It has one important function that it is famously good at, which is carrying battle armor into combat, although it's not 100% ideal for this because it is so easy to destroy. I mean, you know me, I love armor, so I'm never going to rate a mech that is so insufficient in the armor department. I'm never going to rate a mech like that highly. And I think that the Dasher, it has some okay configurations, but if you are getting something with so little armor, you need to be getting a lot of bang for your buck. So the best fighter overall is definitely the Dasher D with 5 ER medium lasers and a targeting computer. That targeting computer definitely catapults this mech to the next level. So if you're playing a game balanced by tonnage or something, which I definitely don't recommend, but if you do it, this is a mech that will perform pretty well. Again, though, just look at that armor, right? An inner sphere medium laser will go internal anywhere except the center torso or the head on this mech. Don't like to see that one bit. So it's too fragile. That's true for all the Dashers, except for the ones that are just like insane suicide cannons. And this one is kind of close to that, right? Because you're going to hit with these 5-7 point blasts. So yeah, this thing can get into a rear arc and erase a mech potentially from the battlefield. And of course then the Dasher D will die itself as that mech's friends destroy it. The problem is, take a look at that battle value, 2,300, right? You could buy a pretty dang good mech for that much battle value. So this thing is not a mech to take if you're playing a game balanced by battle value. That's for sure. More affordable and the best battle value deal in my opinion is the B configuration. It's got 2 medium pulse lasers, so again it's got some accurate weapons. That's pretty much the whole of its firepower. It's also got a couple of machine guns, but obviously not a big deal, a couple of machine guns. And yeah, it's okay, but you're still spending 1,000 battle value for something that's going to die to almost any attack. Really, I mean, the 30-50 variants of the Dasher are almost unplayably weak, in my opinion. I will give an honorable mention just because it's not much worse than the 2 variants that I've just talked about. I'll give an honorable mention to the Prime variant, which also carries quite a bit of, cool firepower. 2 ER mediums, SRM-6, SRM-10. It's kind of like a clan commando, except, again, worse armor than the commando. The mech has incredible speed, don't get me wrong. That's an amazing virtue of it. But if enemies are ignoring it because of its speed, they're just making a mistake. The thing to do against the Dasher is you divert some attention to it and it's gonna die, because you can't completely avoid being hit. That's just one of the realities of this game, and when this thing gets hit, it dies. Okay, so a mech that I'm gonna rate even a bit lower than the Dasher is the Koshi, right? Now, The Dasher, I mean, it's not great, but it does have one remarkable attribute, which is its blinding speed, right? The Koshi doesn't even have blinding speed, and its movement profile is really weird. It walks 7 and it jumps 6. So for some reason they decided to leave off that 7th jump jet that would have made the mech extremely evasive and useful as a backstabber potentially. So I just think this is absolutely terrible design. It's not a good mech at all, and it would have been a good mech if they had put another half-ton into jump jets. Now if you're making custom configurations for the Koshi, you can make it good potentially by putting another jump jet on there as a pod, but for some reason the cannon variants don't do that. Best fighter for this design is going to go to a mech that works a lot like that Dasher Prime with 2 ER mediums and 2 SRM 6s. That's the Koshi B. You know, it's okay. I might even take it over a Dasher Prime in the sense that it's going to survive a little better because it does have armor that will protect it from some attacks, but it's not a good mech. Best battle value deal, you know, the Prime is a pretty cheap mech. It has an LRM, so it can do some damage from long range. You know, this is faint praise. I don't think the Koshi is very strong at all. Okay, the Uller, or the Kit Fox. This is going to be another C range mech. This is a C-, so I think it's even a little bit less great overall than the Dasher because its speed is just so underwhelming for a 30-ton mech. 6 and 9. I mean, the Clan medium mechs, most of them go faster than this. It's really underwhelming. You know, the thing that saves it a bit is that some of the configurations do have some pretty good weapons on board. So the best fighter is definitely the A. It's got a Gauss rifle and 2 ER mediums. That ain't bad at all, right? This thing has some definite firepower that it totes. You know, the only thing is if you look at the armor, you don't have 10 points in any location, which is kind of crazy. And yeah, it's going 6 and 9, and it's got an XL engine anyway, even though it's just ultra slow for how heavy it is. So yeah, I mean, you know, Gauss rifle, it's always going to bring something to the table, but the mech overall is not very strong. The best battle value deal is the Prime, and the Prime does have some interesting functions that you could potentially use it for because it has very long range direct fire weapons. So it's got an ER large laser and an LB5X, so it can fire at very long distances. You know, if you were to put an extremely elite pilot on board, then this thing could hit at its really long range and just kind of kite enemies potentially, especially if those enemies are kind of slow. So that could be useful. With the LB5X, it could also be useful for anti-air use, you know, for firing at VTOLs, for example. That would be a potentially good use of this mech. But I think there's much better alternatives to it. So, you know, even though, I mean, the battle value is not that high, but it's still over 1,000, I would not particularly want to take this mech in a serious game. Now, the best of the 30-50 clan Omnis is definitely the Puma. I'm rating it just a B+ though, so none of the light mechs get into the A range for me. The thing about the Puma is it's nice, it has plenty of armor, so that's good. It's still kind of slow for how heavy it is. Like, do you really want a light mech that goes 6 and 9? I mean, maybe if it has a standard engine and it's kind of like built for pure survival, but that's not what the Puma is doing. So that's kind of a weak point. Also, some of the configurations for the Puma are just a little bit, you know, they're definitely kind of suboptimal. It's got plenty of room on board for weapons, but they don't always give it the best mix of weapons and heat sinks. So to me, it's just still a B range. It's fine. You can definitely bring some Pumas into a good game, but yeah, you compare this thing to the Ryoken, which has the same movement profile. The Ryoken blows it out of the water as an actual useful mech. Now, the best fighter, although it has deep flaws still, this was a tough decision for me. I'm not sure that I made the right call, but I'm saying that the best fighter was the Adder Puma Prime. You know, it's got 2 ERPPCs and a targeting computer. 2 ERPPCs and a targeting computer, right? That's a very special loadout. There's a lot of, you know, clustered together damage this thing can do. It can blow off a head with one shot. So that's a very powerful role to have on the battlefield. And it has a targeting computer. You know, the targeting computer makes it a lot easier to hit with those things. So those ERPPCs are going to be doing plenty of damage. But the heat sinks are real bad, right? They just should have left that flamer off and put an extra heat sink on this thing, and then it would be like twice as good, even though that still wouldn't be enough heat sinks. But the heat sinks are a real problem. You know, you can fire both PPCs one turn, and then you just fire one the next turn, and you can kind of make it work, but even that, you're going to accumulate some heat over time. So it's a deeply flawed mech, but it has incredible punch, and if you want to push your heat with it, you can do some really amazing damage with it. So, you know, I don't think it's a good deal for the battle value at all, though. So if I was playing a regular game for battle value, I'm not going to bring this mech. Best deal for the battle value, the B. I think this is a quite playable mech in something like a tournament setting. You know, you've got that LB5X for if you want to shoot down some aircraft potentially. So that's a very useful weapon, also useful for long-range crit seeking. And you got a Clan Large Pulse Laser, always a welcome thing to see on any mech. You know, that's a brutal weapon, really effective against light mechs, effective against anything. And a couple of ER mediums as backup. That's strong, right? Those weapons are strong. That's like having two, remember, it's like having 2 inner sphere large lasers sitting on this mech just as backup weapons. Can't go wrong with that. So, you know, the Puma B is a nice mech, and it's a nice mech for its battle value cost. I mean, that said, would I take this mech over the Ryoken that has a large pulse laser and an LB10X? Not if I could afford the Ryoken. So this is kind of a mech that is still in suboptimal territory for me. Now finally, I've got to give an honorable mention to another Puma mech that I think this configuration, I've seen it do a good job in a tournament kind of setting. I've seen it fight well. And this is the A, which is based around 2 LRM-20s. That's a really nice loadout. You know, it's just a good, relatively cheap way for the clans to bring their long-range missiles to the table, and clan long-range missiles are really good. I mean, another thing to say about this mech is that it would just butcher infantry with its 2 clan small pulse and its flamer. So that's, you know, if you ever want to like kill some infantry, this is a nice mech to take for that purpose. But primarily, it's about the LRMs, and the LRMs are useful. So this is an okay mech for the battle value. It's solid. I could see taking it for sure. All right, thanks for joining me on my journey through the clan light mechs from 3050. I wish it was a more positive journey. You know, it wasn't. The clan light mechs from this period are not that great. Later on, we see some configurations for some of these mechs that are really good, especially the Dasher H. But for now, you know, I'll just say next time we'll be looking at the clan heavy mechs from this period, and that will be a much happier exercise because a couple of the heavy mechs aren't so great, but a couple of them are really good.